Hello and welcome to the United Mates Football Podcast. My name is Joe, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host all the way from LA, Keitel. And we're also joined today by a guest who these days lives in London, but she actually comes from down under. So Emer McCarthy is a news producer and reporter, and she's currently working for Reuters, but since living in London, she's also worked for the likes of Al Jazeera, Euronews, Sky, and ITV too. So a lot of big names there. But more importantly, or at least more importantly to me, Emer is a Spurs fan, which is obviously great for me, not so great for my Gooner co-host Keitel. But Emer, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. You've made me sound so esteemed by that introduction. I really appreciate it. But I'm just thinking I should have worn my Spurs scarf.
Oh, yeah. So you have missed a trick there, but it's all right.
I know, but it's on me in spirit.
Exactly, always.
I'm the only one, I guess, representing the colours. Obviously, I've got the Arsenal scarves behind me.
Yeah, well, I do live in Islington, so
Ooh.
I'm sure there's
Enemy
quite
territory,
a few of you around.
Well, as long as you can put up with one of us today, that's all you have to contend with. But yeah, hey, Emer, welcome.
I'll try.
I appreciate that. We typically kind of like to kick things off when we have guests by posing an icebreaker question to the group. And then even more typically, well, I've said it a bunch of times now, try to find something personal to them, which is kind of a nice way of saying that we've stalked your Twitter account, Emer, and we noticed that when it comes to your meme and GIF game, which to be fair is very strong, there's one source of material that you tend to draw from more than any other, and it's The Simpsons. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I actually have a tattoo of the Homer Simpson Bush GIF. So I'm here for the Simpsons references, but today's icebreaker for all of us is who is our most underrated Simpsons character. So I'll go first and give you guys a little bit of time to think. For me, it's got to be Smithers. I think that the kind of weird one-way street of sexual tension that he has with Mr. Burns within their relationship is really hilarious. And then I've been saying for a while now, but I think that if they made a spin-off show with Smithers as the main character, I'd certainly watch the hell out of it. So Matt Groening, if you're listening, there's a free idea. But Emer, who would your most underrated Simpsons character be?
Wow, this is a really, really good question and a real head scratcher at the same time. I'm going to say probably Martin. I know that it's a bit left field, but I think Martin's just, I would love to know his backstory. I think he's just a character that hasn't been fleshed out enough, in my opinion. We love Milhouse, we love Bart, Nelson. I think one of my favorite episodes is when they go on the road trip and they end up in like capital city and they end up in like the wig storage place, and Martin's in his little wig. And I think he's a really interesting character.
Yeah, Martin, obviously, they kind of set him up as the smartest kid, if not person in Springfield. And you're not sure yet if he's going to go down this kind of like academic route or this like scientific route, be like the next Professor Frink or something. Yeah, I think there's a lot more to unpack from the Martin Prince character.
Yeah.
Joe, we'll bring you into this. I know you're obviously also a big fan of The Simpsons. Who would be your most underrated character?
Yeah, I am a fan. I was actually last night watching an episode I'd never seen before. It was like a sort of Mad Men themed episode, but I digress. My guy is, well, he's a puppet actually. He doesn't appear much, but Gabbo. I absolutely love Gabbo. That episode is one of my favorite episodes of The Simpsons. So yeah, it would have been nice to maybe see a bit more of Gabbo. I know he said that the kids of Springfield were SOBs, so he sort of got cancelled. But yeah, he was a great character. Nice. Okay, well we've had our little Simpsons chat for today, but now we're gonna get back to the important hard-hitting questions, and we've got a few questions for Emer first about her sort of life and experience with football. So as I mentioned earlier, Emer, you are of course a Spurs fan, so what I'd love to know is, how does someone who grew up in Australia become a Tottenham fan, and also what are your earliest memories of supporting Spurs?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because obviously, well, in the last few years, they've become a bit more popular, but obviously, like growing up, Spurs weren't really a big team or with any big names. But if you can't tell from my name, my parents are Irish, and my dad has been a mad Spurs fan actually since Jimmy Greaves So his all-time favorite player, and my dad has been mad Spurs since then. And also, Spurs aren't exactly a popular team in Ireland. You know, it's big Liverpool, Man U. So Spurs was quite left field, but my dad has always been a huge fan. So that's how I started supporting Spurs. And my sister used to be mad for Man United. And I think that was purely because of Cristiano Ronaldo. And that now has gone completely. And now she's mad Spurs as well. So my dad has, in all the time that I'm 27 years old, all the time I've known my dad, which is that whole time, I cannot think of him not watching a Spurs game live. Every single game, he will be up and he will text me watching the game. So he is completely mad Spurs. And so that's how I go for them.
Well, it's kind of interesting to see that you went through the family loyalty route and then your sister just went for like the heartthrob of football.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't know who that would be
but
in
now
today's
she's
game.
come to her senses.
Okay, so she's a Spurs fan. It's a Spurs family affair. Perfect. Well,
Yes.
I mean, I say perfect. I can't think of anything less perfect as an Arsenal fan, but I'll forgive you guys for now. But sticking with your sort of love for Spurs and moving on to some traveling that you've done. Obviously, you're from Australia. You're living in England. You've sort of studied abroad. The Netherlands, France, and Denmark even perhaps are places that you've spent some time. So when you're abroad and you're following football, Spurs in particular, has that been like anything that's led to some cool experiences, maybe finding local Spurs fans, or beyond that even, when you've been living in these foreign countries, have you been able to embrace any of the local football culture at any point?
Well, I studied abroad in the Netherlands and Denmark, and I worked in France for a bit in 2019. So obviously Holland and Denmark, two soccer. Sorry, I say soccer. That's a bit of a point of contention
you're from the land
there.
of
Maybe
the
we're like,
yeah, that's all right.
So obviously two mad soccer countries. I studied in Holland in Utrecht, where it is impossible to get a ticket to any game because, as well, their stadiums are so small. Not Ajax Stadium, but like the smaller teams. You do kind of forget that these cities are really just like glorified towns. So they're it was impossible to get tickets to an Utrecht game. But when I was in Denmark, I studied in a town called Aarhus, which is the second major city. I also say city quite lightly, but I adored it, absolutely loved it. But it was really funny because when my parents came to visit me when I studied there, and my dad was like hearing rumblings about this guy called Christian Eriksen, who of course went on to be such a prolific Spurs player. So my dad literally, whenever he'd read anything about Christian Eriksen, would send me every article, just I was so clued in. In terms of Spurs fans around the world, they're really, really rare. I have come to find. There's been a few. I'm trying to think since I've come here, if there's been many. I know that I've actually seen, quite funnily enough, a few Australians who've chosen them as their team once they've moved here. But one thing I really remember of like Spurs whilst being abroad is years back now, probably coming up to like 9 or 10 years ago, I was at a market in Cape Town, of all places, and there was a clock seller, and he was purely selling Spurs clocks. So I bought my dad
That was like his career. He made his living. He made his living selling Spurs clocks.
And I am very proud to say that my dad still has that clock hanging. So, yeah, I mean, totally bizarre. But I went to my first Spurs game in the old at White Hart Lane in 2009, I believe. So this is the era of like Gareth Bale. I just really wanted to go because I heard that Jude Law was a fan, and I thought I'd maybe see him in the crowd, but I didn't. But yeah, that was my first Spurs game that I went to.
Nice, yeah. I miss the old White Hart Lane, but the new one's pretty. Yeah, the new one's pretty good too. We just need to get back there. It's just all this bloody COVID getting in the way. But
that's it. I'm actually meant to be seeing Lady Gaga there later this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm also holding out for that.
Well, fingers crossed that goes ahead. But yeah, we'll talk just about your career for a sec. And we said obviously at the start, you know, you've worked since you've been in Europe for Sky, ITV, Al Jazeera, Reuters, and I know obviously back when you were in Australia, you were also working in the media there for a variety of places too. So how's your career in Europe compared to your career in Australia? Is it different? Is it much the same? Do you enjoy it more here?
Very, very different. It's almost like apples and oranges. When I was in Australia, when I left Australia, I was reporting regionally. And that, you know, moving from very small town Australia to arguably the second major media city in the whole world, it was a big jump. But I had worked in producing before, so I knew kind of like the basics. And really when I came here, it was, you kind of realize just how much there is going on, how many news organizations, how many companies, how many opportunities if you really go out and grab them with both hands. So there was a lot of cold calling, a lot of cold emailing, a lot of knocking on digital doors and taking anything. So I did overnights. I did those dreaded midnights till 10 a.m.s, 11 p.m.s till 9 a.m. shifts. I did, you know, midday till midnight shifts. I've done all the public holidays. I've missed all the fun. And then last year came along and it was regular shifts and not much fun elsewhere. So I think here in London, it's just so much more fast paced, which I love. And there's so much more diversity here as well in terms of the news and in terms of content and people that you work with as well. And, you know, there's so many people from all around the world and with so many different backgrounds and different stories. And it's just such a melting pot that really you can't even compare Australia's news industry with the UK.
Well, you've bounced around a little bit, Emer. We were talking about obviously Australia and England and some other places where you worked and studied. I'd say if you end up coming over to the States, just don't work for Fox News. That's all I would suggest.
I know. Well, I mean, a job's a job. No, I'm kidding. No. Maybe Trump News. Do you think Trump News would have me? No.
Trump News.
No. No, I think America, though,
Careful
saying that,
wish
it's
for.
funny you raise it because America is definitely where I would like to work next.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
no, the news world over here is, I'm sure, maybe perhaps very similar, but in some ways maybe a different beast. It's definitely kind of a circus in some ways from my
That's
perspective.
for sure.
But I think Fox News is, I think, maybe the most watched TV show in the world or something like that. So the ratings are there. Otherwise, let's move on to a bit of fun. We have a kind of silly game. I don't know. I'm kind of a sucker for puns. And so I don't even know if this is a pun. I'm just calling it the Three McCarthys. Obviously, that's working on your last name, Ina.
Okay.
I've grabbed sort of facts and tidbits about three footballing McCarthys.
Oh.
Yeah, it's. I'm not going to do too much of a deep dive into the skeletons in your closet or anything like that. You don't have to worry. This is going to be Benny, Mick, and James. So I've got, I think, 8 of these, and they're kind of they're maybe true or falses, or just guess which one's correct. And I'm going to give you guys the questions, and you'll take turns answering first to keep it fair. So the first question about these three McCarthys is that 2 of them not only share a surname, but actually happen to share a birthday which is November 12th. So out of the three McCarthys, who's the odd one out in this situation? And remember, it's picking from Mick McCarthy, the former Wolverhampton and Ireland manager, Benny McCarthy, the South Africa international footballer, and then the only one who's still playing is James McCarthy, who plays for Crystal Palace. So Emer, I'll pass that off to you first. Two of those McCarthys share the same birthday. Which one doesn't?
Mick.
Okay. Joe, what's your guess?
I'll go with Benny.
I have to say it's actually Mick. His birthday is February 7th. So he turned however old he turned.
Oh dear.
So that's 1 point in the bag for Emer. But next time I'll let Joe go first. So Joe, which McCarthy has the most international appearances out of the three?
Ooh. I reckon Benny does.
Okay. Emer, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
Alrighty.
Am I allowed to say the same?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Okay.
at this point, the scores are not even, so you can go as long as you guys don't guess the same for all of them from the beginning. So
Okay.
you guys are both correct. Benny has 80 appearances versus Mick, who had 57 for Ireland. Currently, James has 43, also for Ireland. So moving on to the next one. It's, let's see, two of these McCarthys have had loan spells during their career, but one has never temporarily left their parent club. Who's that McCarthy? Emer, you can go first.
Ooh, the tension. Killing me.
I'm actually going to say Benny again.
Okay. Joe?
Yep.
I just can't remember James McCarthy having a loan spell, so I'm going to have to go with James.
Very educated guess, Joe. It is James.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
Even things up at 2 apiece now. Moving on to this next one. These three McCarthys have all played and or coached in Scotland throughout their careers, but whose last spell north of the English border came most recently? Joe.
So Benny McCarthy's been in Scotland. Is that a thing?
Yeah, apparently.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm going to go with James again, my guy.
All right. Emer, which McCarthy?
I'm going to go with Mick.
Okay. It's actually Benny, who supposedly
we're
retiring was part of a former Everton player's coaching staff on a team up in, I think he played like Hibs or something like that. Would there be a Scottish David Weir or something like something weird? He like joined one of their coaching teams. But yeah, apparently back in 2015, Benny was in Scotland. Next one. So I think neither of you got that, huh? I didn't.
No.
Great.
All right. Two McCarthys had the honor of playing for their hometown clubs during their careers. Which McCarthy didn't? Emer.
Benny.
Okay. Joe?
I think I'm actually going to agree with Emer and say Benny as well.
No, it's James, who actually randomly, despite being Irish, was born in Edinburgh.
Trick question.
Where Mick McCarthy played for Barnsley, which is where he's from, and Benny McCarthy played
Irish
for
town of Barnsley.
Spurs. Yeah, exactly, and he's from Cape Town. So moving on, I think you guys each have two. We'll see if we can separate you by the end of this. Which of our McCarthys has the most appearances for a single club during their career? Joe?
I reckon Mick's just played somewhere for ages. I'm going with Mick.
Emer?
James.
I'm afraid it's Mick, who had 272 appearances, I believe, while he was at Barnsley. He was very loyal to his hometown, was Mick.
Yeah, he just seems like a loyal guy, Mick, I've got to say.
In fact, if you added Benny and James's longest stints together, it still wouldn't reach that number.
That is a great stat.
Yeah. Let's see.
Someone has been crunching the numbers.
I'm putting this together for weeks. Spreadsheets and everything. All right. One of our McCarthys made his senior debut at the age of 16, whereas the others began their professional careers when they were both 18 years old. Which spry McCarthy was the youngest on the scene? Emer.
Benny.
Benny? Joe?
I think it's my guy, James. I'm pretty sure it's him.
You've got the James McCarthy knowledge, Joe. It was James indeed. He played for Hamilton Academic.
Yeah, Hamilton Academic.
16 years old. I think the other two lads, like I said, were both 18 when they made their senior debuts. I think, without having kept as good track of the scores as I should have, which I never do, to be honest with you, I think Joe might have ran out with that one, like 3-2 or something. So
I think so.
And then pride, goes to Joe.
I know my McCarthy.
Turns out that
You
just
do.
having the last name McCarthy doesn't give you an insight into other people with the name McCarthy, apparently. Now we know.
That's for sure.
is for sure indeed. But now it is time to talk a little bit more about Tottenham Hotspur. So, Emer, it's an interesting time to be a Spurs fan at the moment. We're not doing that well in the league recently. We started well. It's kind of gone a bit downhill. A lot of fans are unhappy with Jose. But at the same time, we're in the last 16 of the Europa League now. We've got a Carabao Cup final to, well, I say look forward to. We're playing Man City, but that's in April. And it's kind of hard to say if things are going well or not. What do you think, Emer? Are you satisfied with how Spurs have fared so far this season?
Well, I always go by what my dad says. And the last message that I had from my dad was, can you keep me posted on when Spurs will be sacking Mourinho? So he is not very happy. I think that they might have gone too hard, too fast, too early. And that momentum has not continued. And I think, obviously soccer expert over here, I think that the team is relying too much on certain players. And I think that that's just not putting them in good stead. And I think it's a bit hard to be that impressed and that confident at the moment. But you certainly would know more than I. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm quietly confident now. Gareth Bale looks like he's on the up, which is incredible because if Bale starts playing well, like you said, we've relied far too much on Son and Kane. So why don't?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's rely on Son, Kane, and Bale. That would be a bit better. And then Dele Alli scored a bicycle kick last night, which was great. I enjoyed that a lot. So I mean, if he can get back to some form, that would be a massive plus for the squad. So yeah, I don't really know how I feel about it. I was very excited a couple of weeks ago after I was at my lowest point with Spurs for a while, and now I'm kind of back on the up again. So yeah, we'll see. Kai, from an Arsenal fan's perspective, I know you're not. I wouldn't say you're objective because you don't like Tottenham, but should Spurs fans be satisfied at the moment? Do you think for our squad it's about right, or have we messed up a little bit? What do you think?
I was going to offer to skip my opinion because I don't know if I can not be smug about it.
Yeah.
But essentially, no, you're massively underperforming right now, especially given the investment into the squad at the beginning of the season with the permanent signing of Lo Celso and then adding like Doherty, bringing in Bale additionally. You finally, in theory, got some actual backup to Kane with Vinicius, and it still has made no difference. So apart from in like the League Cup and the Europa League maybe. So, I'm not sitting here on like a high horse like Arsenal are any better than you guys are. If anything,
well,
we're both, kind of going through the mire. So maybe misery loves company, I guess. So yeah. Otherwise, I think moving on to a more sort of broad Spurs question for you, Emer. I wanted to know from like my perspective, being an Arsenal fan essentially means sadly having to live in denial. It does mean holding high standards when it comes to like the aesthetic side of the game, appreciating beautiful football and whatnot. And I think also it kind of means backing the manager and young players at the club. So to me, that's what it's like being an Arsenal fan. But for you, Emer, what does it mean to be a Spurs fan in the bigger picture?
Ooh, that's a good question. My gosh, I think for me, there's just something really sentimental about it. The fact that my dad is such a big fan and has been for his whole life. And then that's been passed down to my sister and I. And I think as well, it's like I think there's something though with every team, isn't there? As soon as you find someone who also goes for your team, like that's just an immediate connecting point. I guess, it's really strange because obviously I said I lived in Islington and, that's the very, very south of North London. But there feels something like really like uniting about being a Spurs fan and living in North London. I think there's something to be said about that, even though I'm smack bang in the middle of Arsenal territory. I live around the corner from the Emirates. I think there is something that you do feel an extra element of connection living within the realms. So yeah, that's kind of how I would see being a fan. But I guess as well, this is obviously from the outside looking in for many, many years. So yeah, I think to live here and to live in North London where your team is from is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool. But yeah, living near the Emirates, we'll have to.
Yeah.
That might have to change, but it's probably, if I'm honest, it's probably better to be living near the Emirates than it is to be living near the Spurs Stadium. If I'm honest, I feel bad saying it, but
very true.
It is true. So yeah, that's, and there's some nice bits around the Emirates, I suppose. But I know obviously, but you've spoken a lot about your dad, and your dad loved Jimmy Greaves, and that was kind of what got him into Spurs. But since you've been supporting Emer, who would you say over the years, who's been your ultimate favourite Spurs player and why?
Oh my God, it has to be Son. Like, he's just out of this world. And I think, beyond the pitch as well, he's done so much for the team's brand and for the Spurs brand internationally, especially in what is such a lucrative market, Asia. Being this beloved figure in South Korea is just, I think, fantastic. A country that has hosted a World Cup and has produced many players. I think to have this young gun when Korea is like the cool, I mean, I can't think of a country right now that's cooler than South Korea. When you have, for example, K-pop is the biggest music phenomenon in the world. Parasite was the winner of Best Picture last year. There's so many Korean dramas. I saw today Netflix is investing $500 million into new Korean dramas. And then to have arguably the best player in the world at the moment playing for Spurs and from South Korea, I think he's just beyond what he has done for the team. He is just beautiful to watch. He is unbelievable. And all I can hope is that he stays and he sticks around.
From a neutral perspective, even, Son is one of the more easy Spurs players to, I shouldn't say like, but to not dislike, maybe.
Yes. He's very diplomatic of you.
I try. Otherwise, with Son, it's surprising. Like, I think the sort of reputation that he came in with was a young star with a lot of potential. He'd been playing in the Bundesliga and doing well, but I think it's probably eclipsed whoever signed him's expectations and that of all of the Spurs fans as well. Nobody probably saw him going as far as he has and turning into the player that he is. I think obviously Real Madrid have been linked with him for a while. So if you can hold on to Son, that's going to be important, especially coming. Oh, there he is. Zeus agrees. He's strong, vehemently agrees.
Everyone agrees. Yeah, exactly. Everyone agrees. I think as well, it's really cool, the fact that he did his military service, which is compulsory in South Korea. I think that the fact that he, did that with such little fanfare as well, it just shows he's so humble and so gracious and just on and off. I just think he's a really fantastic sports person and a great role model as well for a lot of young players coming up, because, soccer players aren't exactly the most loved athletes, but I think he's just an example of a fantastic player and person.
Yeah, you've seen the likes of Foden and Greenwood sneaking out of an Icelandic hotel to meet some young women. You wonder what they would do to get out of military service. You can only imagine. Moving on to, I guess, maybe our last subject, which is going to be, I mentioned we'd come back to it, Australian football and the Socceroos. So from my very outsider perspective, seemingly, at least on the international scene, the Socceroos have been in a bit of a decline since the days of Harry Kewell, Tim Cahill, and Mark Viduka, who I just have to put in because every time I mention it, someone tells me he's Croatian. He's not Australian. So he's Australian, guys. He's Australian, all right? Anyway, so moving on from Mark Viduka anyway, the team at the minute, to my knowledge, has not been able to really replicate the success or like achievements of moving far in tournaments that they used to. Generally speaking, what's your opinion of Australian football culture? But beyond that, what's gone wrong?
a very, very interesting question because obviously in Australia, there's quite a few codes. So the reason we don't call it soccer is because we have two other footballs in Australia. So we have Australian rules football and we also have rugby league, which literally in a map of Australia, you can cut a line in it and it's called the Barassi line. So Ron Barassi was a prolific Australian rules footballer, and half calls AFL football, the other half calls rugby league football. So already, soccer didn't really attract the supporters that the other footballs did. But I feel that all changed in 2006 when the Socceroos qualified for the World Cup in Germany. And I still remember in 2005, I was in grade 6. I remember watching Australia beat Uruguay. Like, I still remember that, 15, 16 years later. That kind of says a lot about how it was a real turning point for soccer in Australia. And, everyone would get up and watch the Socceroos play. And I remember when we were knocked out by Italy, it was just the biggest, it was the saddest day for Australia. So I do think that, Australia gets this kind of soccer fever every 4 years. But at a grassroots level, soccer has always been popular. I think given Australia's really, really large immigrant population, especially from places like Italy, and of course as well, Australia has a huge British population and a British diaspora, and there's obviously huge support from those communities as well, and people that have always played it and watched it, and it is still quite popular with younger kids. But whilst the Socceroos aren't that great, the Matildas, the female team, are fantastic and deserve so much more recognition than what they get. So I think the future looks really bright for Australian soccer. And there's I hope that there will be a lot going into it at a grassroots level and also at a professional level, because there is a lot of talent in Australia. As I said, look at the Matildas. And I think if we really focus a lot more, if we give it more attention, soccer's still played on networks that don't get the viewership of other networks, and it's also a lot of the Premier League, for example, Bundesliga, Serie A, are all pay-per-view as well. So I think it just needs to reach a wider audience, and especially female soccer needs to be reaching a wider audience. But I do think that the future is bright for the sport in Australia. And I mean, of course, Australian rules football and rugby league, they're always going to be popular. But, who's to say that soccer can't reach those same levels? Maybe Australia just needs to host a World Cup, and then that will all change.
Maybe you'll have the opportunity through your TV work to give more exposure to some of the Australian football. And I'm embarrassed even, that I didn't necessarily mention the Matildas off the bat, because obviously they are so brilliant. I just wanted to mention real quick before we move on to this last little game that we have. Do either of you remember, was it John Travolta in the build-up to one of the World Cups was filmed? There's all that footage of him in the Australia scarf, and he's singing some song from Greece, but trying to put Australian football lyrics into it. It's really awkward.
Didn't that have to do with, wasn't he flying planes for Qantas at the time?
Yeah. This is all sounding familiar, yeah.
This is coming back to me.
I guess I wanted to ask you, what was that? Was that a thing in Australia? Were people aware of John Travolta doing this bizarre Greece Australian Socceroo?
I need to look it up right after this. God.
Yes, so do I. I need to refresh my memory, but it's sounding very familiar. But I think it had to do with Qantas.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I've probably sidetracked us enough, so I'll zip my lips for just a moment. But
Yeah, that is. I didn't think I'd be learning that today, but there you go. The beauty of the podcast. But Ema, earlier you mentioned obviously there's two more footies in Australia. There's rugby league, and then there's also Aussie rules. But we're gonna have a little final game here, which is going to focus on the English football and then Aussie rules. Those are the two ones we're going to focus on. And
Okay, good, because I know nothing about rugby league.
oh, great. Yeah, no, neither do us. So we don't know anything about Aussie rules, but that's beside the point. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you a name of a club, and you have to tell me if it's an Australian soccer team or if it's an Aussie rules team. But to make it a bit harder, there's going to be no teams from the AFL or from the A-League. So there's going to be some pretty random teams in here. So we're going to be testing both of your niche knowledges of Aussie rules and football. So here we go. I'll get the first one up here. Okay. So the first team is called the Aubust Snowy Rovers. Ema, do you know which sports the Aubust Snowy Rovers are from?
Do you know what's really funny? Orbost was in the region I worked in as a reporter in regional Victoria. And this is bad because I don't know, but I'm going to go with AFL.
AFL you're going with. Okay. Kai, what about you?
Something about Rovers just makes me think of football. So I'm going to go with soccer.
Okay. Kai's gone with soccer. Ema's gone with Aussie rules. Ema, so this team plays in the East Gippsland Football League, but it's an Aussie rules league. So they are. You got the Gippsland.
Also, I'm going to pick you up there. Gippsland, not Gippsland.
Gippsland. Oh, Gips. There we go.
That was my region, so that's the only reason that I can speak with authority on that.
Gippsland Football League. Fantastic. Okay. So Ema goes 1-0 up there. Let's go for the next one. And this is, of course, the Riverina Rhinos.
Is this me going first? The Riverina?
Yeah.
Ooh, the Rhinos. That's a manly rugby, football, Aussie rules thing. Sure. Yeah. Aussie rules.
Okay. Aussie rules for Kai. Ema, how about you?
I'm going to go soccer.
Oh, okay. Again, conflicting answers. Only one of you can be right. And I can reveal Ema's gone 2-0 up. They play in the NPL Capital League, apparently, the Riverina Rhinos. I agree, Kai. It does sound like a kind of rugby or Aussie rules type thing, but apparently no, it's a soccer team. So there we go, 2-0 to Ema. And let's go for the third team. And this one is a very weird name. It's just Sturt. Kai, how about we'll start with you again. What is Sturt?
How do you spell Sturt?
Sturt. I imagine it must be a place. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I imagined it would be spelled. It still doesn't help. Let's go for a Socceroo type situation. Yeah.
Okay, Socceroo. Ema, how about you? What are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going to go soccer as well.
Okay, we got two Socceroos for Sturt. But it's an Aussie rules team. They play in the Adelaide League. Sturt. There we go.
Oh, Sturt. Yeah.
There we go. So it's still 2-0 to Ema. Can Kai pull one back now? Ema can answer first for this one. And the team is called Warners Bay. What do you reckon?
Soccer.
Okay. Kai, what about you?
I'm still looking for Bay. That was a bad joke. Anyway. Let's go with soccer. Yeah.
Soccer. Two soccers. Well, Kai's got his first point on the board. You've both got it right. Of course, Warners Bay from the Newcastle Zone Premier League.
Of course.
There's a famous team in the A-League called the Newcastle Jets that I think Emil Heskey even played for once. But yeah, Warners Bay, they're in that sort of New South Wales region. Where should we go from next? Okay, Kai, you can answer first here. I love the name of this team. The Sunshine Coast Wanderers.
Sunshine Coast Wanderers. Let's go for Aussie rules.
Aussie rules. Okay. Aussie rules for Kai. How about for Ema?
Soccer.
Okay. Sunshine Coast Wanderers. Ema's got it right again. She just knows her team.
Yeah. I knew that because there's a Western Sydney Wanderers. So I put the two together and
There we go. Yeah, this Wanderers, they play in the Queensland Premier League, and yeah, not a bad team there. Right, let's go for it. We got a few more left. Let's go now, and Kai can start us off again. I don't know if I'm even going to say this right, but Dookie United.
Dookie. I hope it's not.
Dookie.
Oh, it is. All right.
Dookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
That wouldn't go down well in America, that name.
Really?
I'm not even going to get into it. But anyway.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know. What have I got myself into that?
No, it's not like an insensitive thing. It's more just gross. But anyway.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now
Dookie United. Yeah, let's just go for soccer because of United.
Okay, guys, go for soccer. Ema, what are you going for?
Yeah, I'm going to go with soccer as well.
Yeah. I've tricked you both. I did think that, it sounded like a football team, but no, it is an Aussie rules team from the Kia Bramman District Football League. There we go. These are just some great names and great places in Australia. And we've got one more for you guys. I think maybe Ema's ahead. Well, no, you're definitely ahead. I think that you probably won, but we'll do one more for pride. And this one is Green Gully. Kai, you can kick us off with this one.
Soccer.
Soccer, okay. And Ema, what are you going with?
AFL.
AFL, okay. Well, Keitel might not have won, but he ends on a positive note. Green Gully, they play in the NPL Victoria Football League, apparently. Yeah, and it sounds very weird. I don't know how. It must be a place or something like that. But yeah, Ema, you've proven to us your obscure soccer and Aussie rules teams. Well done.
Thank you. I'll wear that with pride.
Yeah, you'll never forget Green Gully ever again.
No.
Right. That is actually that does bring us to the end of today's show. So as always, a big thank you to my co-host Keitel, and then obviously a special thank you to our brilliant guest Ema as well. We hope you enjoyed yourself. And also, Ema, how can our listeners follow you and keep up to date with everything you'll do?
You can follow me on Twitter at Emer A. McCarthy, EMERA, and then McCarthy, spelt the normal way. And you can give me all of your Spurs knowledge and all of your Spurs hot takes and all of your Simpsons memes, most importantly. And I will be happy to interact.
Fantastic. Everyone, send your Spurs takes and get those Simpsons.
Come on, you Spurs.
Oh, yeah. Come on, you Spurs. Love it. What a way to end. But also for everyone, remember to follow us as well on our social channels across Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. That is at United Mates FP. And then we're on YouTube as well. So, just type in United Mates Football Podcast there. And if you'd like to subscribe, we'd like that a lot. That is sadly all we've got time for. Thank you very much and goodbye.